All the questions here involve powers that are fractions. So if you look at question 1, we have 27 to the 2/3, we have 10,000 to the 3/4, and 32 to the negative 4/5. And they ask you to evaluate. So we want to come up with a simpler version, a value to represent each of these powers. So we look at the first one, we have 27 to the power of 2/3. There's two ways of working this out. You can either do, it's the cube root of 27, and then we square it, or we will do 27 squared, and then we will cube root. That's what it means when we have a fractional power. The number at the bottom, the denominator, is the root, and the number at the top is then the power. So we could do either option here, but looking at it clearly, it's going to be easier to cube root 27 than it is to square it, especially as you might be asked to do this without a calculator. So we're going to use the first one here, and say what's the cube root of 27? Well, that's simply going to be 3. 3 3s are 9, 3 9s are 27. So we're going to do 3 squared, and then 3 squared is going to give you 9. So the answer to 27 to the power of 2/3 is just 9. Now for B, again, we have two options here. We can do the 4th root of 10,000 and then cube, or we could do 10,000 to the power of 3 and then take the 4th root. Obviously the first one is going to be easier. The 4th root of 10,000 is simply 10, so that's going to give us 10 cubed, and 10 cubed then is 1,000. Finally here we have 32 to the power of negative 4/5. A negative power means we have a reciprocal. So this is actually going to be 1 over 32 to the 4/5. Now it's going to get confusing, so I'm just going to do the 32 to the 4/5 on the right hand side here, and then I will put it back into the fraction as a reciprocal. Now here again we have two choices. We can do the 5th root of 32 and then raise it to the power of 4, or we can do 32 to the power of 4 and then do the 5th root. Clearly the first one is the obvious one. So we want the 5th root of 32. And you'll get to spot these as you go. The more you do, the more you'll see numbers coming up all the time. So 5th root of 32 to the power of 4. 5th root of 32 is 2, because 2 to the power of 5 is 32. I'm going to raise that to the power of 4. 2 to the 4 is equal to 16. So I know that 32 to the 4/5 is 16, but I want to the negative 4/5. So going back to my fraction, I'm going to say 1 over 32 to the 4/5 is simply 1 over 16. So moving on, question 2, we have 16 to a decimal. We have 16 to the power of 0.5. 0.5 is clearly can be written as a half, so I can write that as 16 to the half. And you should know that if you're doing to the power of a half, that is equal to the square root. So that is the square root of 16, and the square root of 16 is 4. Technically plus or minus 4, but for these questions we'll just stick with the positive solution. For 3, we have, it says simplify fully, 7 times 7 to the power of 0 times 7 to the negative 1. So we'll leave 7 alone. 7 is just 7. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. And 7 to the negative 1 is the reciprocal of 7, which is 1 over 7. So what have we got here? We have 7 multiplied by 1, which is 7 multiplied by 1, which is 7. So we have 7 over 7. And 7 divided by 7 is equal to 1. So those three together pretty much cancel each other out, and you end up just with 1. The final one here is a little bit more tricky. You have w is greater than 1, right in order from smallest to largest. So let's have a look at this. What have we got going on here? We have w to the 0. We know that is equal to 1. W cubed we'll leave that as w cubed, and it says w is greater than 1. So w cubed will be a large number. W cubed over w to the 4, well, that's just going to be 1 over w. So that's a small number, I suppose you could say. It's certainly going to be less than 1 because w is greater than 1. And our last one here, w to the minus 2, is going to be 1 over w squared. Now if you look at this and you think it through, the largest one will be this. If we have a number greater than 1, when we cube it, it's going to be greater than 1. That's the only one of these four numbers that is greater than 1. So my largest value will be w cubed, so I'm going to write that on the right-hand side here. The second largest will be w to the 0, because it must be bigger than my two fractions. My fractions, the denominators will be larger than the numerators, because w is greater than 1. So w to the 0 is the second largest one, 1 over w, and then 1 over w squared. 1 over w squared will be smaller than 1 over w. So here, this is the smallest, this is the next, this is the next, this is the next, and there my question is finished.